right, we are live. Let's see, I hope so. Okay, we are. Good deal. Oh my gosh, I forgot how to do this. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's see if I got all my settings set up. Oh, perfect. All right, good to see everybody. Welcome, Mods, D, Copper Horse, Mitzi. Who else we got in here? Good to see you guys. Jill, Susie Q, Melissa, Necessary, Donna, Ruru, Olivia, Jill, good to see you guys. Miss Mega and Brandy, good to see you guys. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to tune into the show. We're going to be covering Delphi. It's a case that's kind of what got me started into YouTube. I was actually watching Delphi stuff about the Delphi case. That was way back before they had any arrest. They were still, I think this is before Kagan Klein and all that. And then shortly after I got into it and covered the Gabitito case, just as that ended, is when I think it was November, December of 2022. This is when Kagan Klein came around with the Anthony Shots account, and that just kind of amped up and got everybody kind of excited, to dive into the case because there was something new to talk about. But anyway, we're going to be going over it all. I can't believe it's literally a week from today. Technically, the actual trial opening statements is the 17th, I believe. So next Monday is jury selection, and I believe it's 2 to 3 days. I think they have 3 days. Maybe it might take 2. I'm not sure, but I think they have it slated for the 17th. So 14th, 15th, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be the opening statements. So we're looking at approximately 10 days from now. So I just can't believe it's finally here. For those that know this case, knows it has been pushed back so many times. We were supposed to have a trial actually a year ago. I think it was right. I think it was in October or at the end of the year. Then that got pushed back to January, I believe. And then that got pushed back to May, which that was kind of a last minute thing because that was a speedy trial that they were going to do. And then that didn't work out. And now we're here at the end of the road and there cannot be any more continuances. This is going to cost words up to over $4 million when said and done. That's pretty wild. So let's get into it. I've got tons of stuff to go over on this. And if you're coming over from the Sebastian Rogers case, I will try to do a live Wednesday. There are some things that I've been told over the past week or so. And I'm really just hoping something transpires to where I can share a lot of it. But there will be a few things that I can probably share. And so definitely, most likely, we'll do a live on Sebastian Wednesday. But then once next week comes around, unless there's some breaking news in the Sebastian Rogers case, probably be the main focus on this case. So yes, Donna. It was Todd Click. Todd Click was an investigator. I forget his exact role. I know a lot about the case, but there's tons of other creators that know a lot more of the minutia. But yeah, Todd Click was like an investigator, detective, or something like that. Or at the very least, worked on the case. He was actually working on looking into the Odinism crowd with the Brad Holder, Elvis Field. He was tasked into looking into that crowd, and that happened way early on in the investigation. But unfortunately, nothing turned out from that. But when the defense spoke to him many years later, they found out that he still believes that they could be involved. But then he was recently arrested. Apparently he works for CPS or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong in chat. And he was actually going to be a defense witness because he still believes in the Odinism theory. And so that was going to be a big witness for the defense. But yeah, he got slammed with charges of forgery. There's like 3 to 4 charges. Not good. Doesn't look good on him at all. And that's terrible, especially for working in that kind of field. To be, that where children neglect and other things happen, and where those cases need to be taken very seriously, and he's like writing off as if things are. I read like the just basic report. I wasn't too interested in it, but yeah, it doesn't look good. Anyway, let's get into. I've got tons of stuff. Let's just break down the. For anybody that's not familiar with this case, we'll just break down the recap for a second here.
Abby Williams and Liberty German had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge, which was supposed to be a teenage hangout with a historic trail and a...
I'm just thinking about this. This will be probably one of the last times I do an intro like this, and then we'll have so much more information when the trial comes next week. It's crazy.
Really high, old abandoned bridge. The 2 girls, who were best friends, just had a sleepover the night before and were excited when Libby's sister, Kelsey German, said she would drop them off as long as the 2 girls found a ride home, which they did. Although it was February, the temperature was nice for that day.
Thank you so much, Fly
Even
Girl.
though it was a Monday, they had school off that day. The 2 girls, Abby and Libby, would be dropped off just before 2 p.m., where they planned on only staying for a couple of hours. The 2 teens, Abby and Libby, would begin walking the 501 trail to the Monon High Bridge. As the 2 would approach the bridge, Libby, who had her iPhone, would take 2 pictures, one as they passed the first platform, and another which shows Abby looking down as she is crossing the scary, tall, gap-filled railroad tie. The girls didn't.
Man, it's so wild. It's still so surreal that looking at these images a million times and finally answers
know it yet, but they
coming.
were not alone. As a few hours would go by, the father of Libby, Derek German, would show up, but the 2 girls were not at the meetup spot. Well. Thinking that the 2 teens just lost track of time, he would end up calling Libby's phone. The phone was ringing, but no one was answering. He would begin searching for the 2 teens, but when running into other people, no one had seen them. Eventually, the authorities would be called out, and this would lead to a search party looking for the
Billy,
2
good
girls.
to see you.
But sadly, there was no sign of them on that first night of the 13th. With the search being called off late that night for safety reasons, it would be resumed early that next day. They brought in helicopters, divers, and many other resources to scour the area. But just around noon that day, they would soon discover a grisly scene. Authorities would discover the 2 girls across the river.
So, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but for some that are maybe not as familiar with this case, they couldn't find the girls that day, that night. It's just really sad because they were right there. As a matter of fact, if you can see my mouse, this is the bridge they would cross. And it's actually kind of a dead end, even though it's not technically a dead end, because it kind of runs onto private properties. Technically, when you get to the end of the bridge, I don't know if it's there now, but it has like a big trespassing sign. And so technically, for teenagers and whoever that went out to this area, if they did cross the bridge, they knew that, this was kind of end of the line. And basically you just turned back because it was technically a dead end, because anywhere else you go, you would be, on private property. But the girls would be forced downhill. Obviously, we'll get into that. But they were found just kind of where my mouse is moving. But because this bridge is so tall, it's like over 100 feet or whatever. And it is a very dangerous old bridge. And there's, a lot of railroad ties that have gaps in them and stuff. And so what they originally thought when they got there is they thought that the girls had likely, or there was a possibility that the girls just got injured and somehow maybe got hurt, maybe fell through the railroad tie, or, basically. But yeah, they were thinking, the main thing is they were thinking, maybe some kind of injury had happened. And then I think after that, it kind of went to, well, maybe the girls are just kind of on the run, just being teenagers. And but then as it got later into the night, they started searching. And unfortunately, of course, because it started happening when volunteers showed up, it was already kind of in the evening. Many, I don't know how many, but many people when have talked about it when they arrived, it was basically getting dark, if not dark out by that time. Keep in mind it's February, so obviously the days are short. So like 6, 7 p.m. it gets dark. So of course they're out there, pitch black more or less, looking for them. And they just weren't that far away, but they just unfortunately couldn't find them.
And both had sadly been murdered.
Investigators solemnly identified the two bodies found in Carroll County as 13-year-olds Libby German and Abby Williams.
We would soon get multiple press conferences, including one of the most memorable statements by Superintendent Doug Carter.
Hey, Jim, good to see you.
We know that this is about power to you. And you want to know what we know. And one day, you will. A question to you. What will those closest to you think of? 2 children. Only a coward would do such a thing. We are confident that you have told someone what you have done.
I love Doug Carter.
Or at the very least, they know. Because of how different you are since the murders. I believe you have just a little bit of a conscience left. And I can assure you that how you left them in that woods is not what they're experiencing today.
I mean, that's got to go down as one of the biggest press conferences. Kind of just the chills I get from his speech, just truly, just the emotions and everything from him and what he says, it's just wild.
I just unveiled the person that we believe responsible for the murder of these 2 little girls.
We would also finally get a grainy image of the monster who was responsible.
So we'll talk about this.
Not only that,
well,
but we would also get a
So some new details. Again, they're rumors until we actually get, confirmation. But we'll talk about one of the reasons why this may look so crappy, among other things. But
second clip of him walking, plus the 4 infamous words that was
one of the biggest ones, especially new people that come in from this, when they always see this clip, what they don't realize is it's just 72 frames, and basically it's looped after the first 48, and they looped it in a spot where when they basically wanted to show his gait, the way he walked, and obviously from how they filmed him, they must not had him for very long, only a few seconds. So I'm assuming what they did is, so they just wanted to show one step from each foot and then just kind of repeat it. But where they kind of edit it, it makes him look like he has a limp. And so one of the theories for a long time is they thought he was had like a peg leg or something.
Said to the girls.
Guys. Downhill. Guys.
This video was taken by Libby's iPhone at 2:13 p.m. while at the end of the bridge with Abby. It shows rearranged by the offender.
Document also gave new information about the crime scene, saying one of the victims was missing an article of clothing. There were no visible signs of a struggle or fight. Investigators also recovered fibers and
Black Widow,
unidentified
good to see
hairs,
ya.
and it also appeared the girls' bodies were moved and staged.
This case would go unsolved for many years, with 2 different sketches being released years apart that look like 2 different people.
And in my opinion, the worst thing ever in this case was the 2 sketches. I think it threw so many for a loop. You know, it went from, is there 1 killer to 2 killers to, like, you know, they're just so far apart. You know, you got age difference, the hair, you know, they just couldn't be further from apart. And it was just, it added so much confusion to this case.
Yet they were supposed to be
and
the same
rumors
person,
just ramped up from
which
there.
just added more confusion to the public, who were very frustrated at the time. Fast forward 4.5 years later, and in October of 2022, we would finally get a name and a face to put
Grady,
next
he's
to the 2
amazing.
sketches
Yeah, he is.
of the person who is now being charged with the double homicide. Richard Allen, who was 45 years old at the time of the murders, worked at a local CVS store as a shift leader. The store he worked in had the sketch of the killer in details about the case. Just like a wolf in sheep's clothing, Allen was hiding in plain sight. Richard Allen's home was only
Just like Doug Carter said.
5 minutes away from the Monon High Bridge.
So this is, so I'm going to be, yeah, I'm sure some of you like D and stuff, maybe Black Widow, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen me put this timeline together many months, God, probably a year ago. But I always add new stuff in, and I've got a ton of stuff, and I'll also talk about all the other suspects just to kind of cover everything. But we will do the timeline. I've kind of fast forwarded it, but so here's one of the, because there's been some new stuff, you know, as it slowly comes out, and as we get slower to the trial, there's always kind of rumors for now, so of course we'll claim until it's confirmed. But allegedly, Richard Allen was slated to work that day. Rumor has it, Allen called in to work. So again, and we'll emphasize this later, but Allen did work at the CVS, but he was not a pharmacist. They still get it wrong in the media. I watched a Court TV special, I think the other day, and they had Barbara McDonald on, and they still mentioned the pharmacy technician thing. And they even had a witness like saying, oh yeah, I went through the drive-thru and he was so nice. And I'm like, it's not Richard Allen. You know, Richard Allen did not work as pharmacy tech, and we'll get more into that. But anyway, he worked as a shift supervisor, which meant, you know, he'd stock the shelves, maybe work the cash register. But yeah, he was mainly there to kind of supervise. And then I've worked in a similar role as him because I've worked in retail for nearly 8 years, actually more than that, but for grocery, that kind of style, 7.5, 8 years. Anyway, for those that haven't heard this, Allen allegedly was supposed to work that day, and apparently he was suffering from depression at that time. Again, this is all rumor, alleged, and that he ended up sleeping past his alarm, so he called in. So I guess if that's true, we'll find that out, obviously, during the trial. And then Kathy Allen would see him before, and then she went to work, and then wouldn't be back until 6 p.m. Then, according to this source, Richard Allen then allegedly went to his mother's home in Peru, Indiana, which, with all this put together, does make sense on the direction that he allegedly came from, because we'll talk about that here in a minute, but that actually really makes a lot of sense, and for multiple reasons. But yeah, apparently after sleeping in, calling in, he went to his mother's home in Peru. That's, I think, like a 40-minute drive, something around in there. Then Allen would obviously go to the Monon High Bridge that day. It's been confirmed even by his former attorney. But originally he told Dan Dillon he was there from 1:30 to 3:30. The crime started at 2:13, ended around 2:32 is when I think Libby's phone stopped. And then later on, when the defense came along, apparently he now claims that he was there from noon to 1:30, which to me, being a person who believes that, in my opinion, I think the evidence is there. Out of all the other suspects, he's at the top for me. And I think that's just really fishy that here he's moving his timeline to noon to 1:30. Chris Owens, good to see you, buddy. Did you guys also know that CVS Richard Allen worked across the street from the Dairy Queen where Kelsey worked at? Yeah, it's a small town. Obviously, it's a town of what, like 3,000 or something like that, less than that. I don't know, maybe that's gone up or down. It's just a small little, farm town where really they have like a main street, and basically all their stores and bars, whatever, are all on Main Street. That's it. That's their main thing. So yeah, everything's right there. The police station's right across from the store. It's so surreal to think about it. But oops, I wanted to show that's right here. So if he did go to Peru, this would explain, again, if he is the suspect and the killer, this would explain why he ended up coming the way he did, because his car would be allegedly seen going west, which if he had just left from his home, he shouldn't have been seen on that camera, for those that are familiar with the logistics of it. And we'll look at it more, but here is another map. So he lived right here, 1967 Whiteman Drive. And the shortest route to it, which is 6 minutes, is just going up, heading over, and then looping around, and then parking at the CPS building. And the other way, which is just about the same amount of time, is looping and getting on the highway here, and then just going up and coming around. The long way, which takes almost twice the time, is to go down this road up here and just really kind of backtrack all the way around, and that would make no sense if he was just going there from home. It makes no sense why he would do that. So I always thought that was kind of interesting that he was caught going west on it. So again, if he was coming back from Peru, which is northeast, would make sense for him to be coming from southwest. Yeah, good to see you, Jilly Bean. Yeah, it's going to be a bummer that we're going to have to rely on, I'm sure Twitter is going to be a hot thing, with the people that are in the courtroom. They'll be, tweeting out in between breaks. I'm sure during those opening statements, the second there's a break, I'm sure there's going to be some bombshells possibly dropped.
This is 4 juvenile witnesses who arrived at the trails sometime before noon that day. They would walk to the bridge, then turn around and begin to walk back. They would run into somebody who they believe could have been the suspect. This is the road the killer likely took just before parking at an abandoned building known as the CPS building.
Odin, yeah. Yeah, I think the Odin thing was the worst. I mean, he had so much better third-party suspects as Ron Logan. I mean, and then Kagan Klein. Everybody, I don't think anybody would bat an eye if they took Kagan Klein and arrested him.
There is a
and pinned it
working
on him.
camera on this building here. According to the PCA, it shows a black Ford Focus passing by at 1:27 p.m. Allegedly, this would be Richard Allen.
So this will be interesting to see that footage eventually get released, and be interesting to know how well is the footage. You know, can you really make out? For you guys, remember what I showed you, what they can do with vehicles and surveillance footage. You know that the programs have come a long way, and so I'm sure. You know, just seeing a black Ford Focus. I mean, keep in mind this is a town of what 2,000 to 3,000 people. I mean. You know, that's not many vehicles. Huge shout out to Indie Archive. He's got a YouTube channel. He's gone out and it's got so much footage. Any place you want to know about or you want to see about that area, like drone footage
From here,
on foot.
the killer parked his car in an unusual manner,
He has
which would
done
catch
it.
the attention of other witnesses.
Of course, when he went there in 2023, the CPS building had been torn down many years prior. That's what it looked like before. And it's believed that the car had likely parked in between these two shrubs area here and kind of backed in, which would look kind of suspicious and would kind of block your vehicle because it's obviously we're kind of getting a top view, but I'm sure if we were down on the ground, that foliage would be maybe, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet or 2 to 4 feet maybe. Oh, thank you so much, Olivia. Oh, yeah, we're going to be covering this case nonstop. We'll kind of circle around to this, but this is going to be an important thing with the Betsy Blair witness who saw. There was 3 witnesses who saw 3 different vehicles at certain points. Did I? Oh. And one of the bigger witnesses, Betsy Blair, which I can't wait to hear what she has to say, saw this Ford Comet. But if you look at it, I don't think it's going to be a big deal with this Ford Comet. I know they made, mention it in the Frank's Motion. But if you look at it, you know, this Comet, you have one witness seeing a PT small SUV, like something like it, similar to a PT Cruiser or SUV. Then we have the Ford Comet, but then at 2:28, we have a dark smart car. So clearly, this car, in my opinion, I think somebody probably with a Ford Comet maybe just parked there to maybe turn around, and Betsy had just been leaving to just happen to see that. But I really don't think that's going to go far. Oh, we got a birthday girl in here. Oh, happy birthday, Heather, whatever. That's a little tongue twister. Say that 10 times fast. Happy birthday. Yeah, I am really interested to hear what she has to say. I mean, she's huge. I mean, she's the one that kind of, in a way, sparked that 2019 press conference that where Doug Carter says we're changing gears and all that. She felt like the original sketch. Sorry, I got neighbors outside a little rowdy. But yeah, she went in and was like, hey, I don't feel like this first sketch is accurately what I saw, And according to her, she said, well, I think this came from the defense. So I guess we'll have to see, because context is everything. But according to the defense, it said that she was 100% confident in what she saw in the sketch that was produced. But this is the thing that gets me
These four
with
witnesses, which included 2 sisters.
Richard Allen's original statement coming forward shortly after this terrible tragedy. He said he was there from 1:30 to 3:30, and it is almost just on par with what this alleged suspect's time frame is.
Somebody near the Freedom Bridge entrance. Coincidentally enough, Allen's original timeline he gave to Dan Doolin lines up almost perfectly for when the 4 witnesses and Allen would cross paths. Allen would even claim he ran into multiple females when arriving to the Freedom Bridge.
And I think, obviously, these witnesses are going to be huge. They're definitely going to be up there. The 4 juvenile witnesses, I think 2 were sisters. And they were just about to leave. They're going to walk across this Freedom Bridge, but they were kind of taking some pictures and hanging around in this area, just kind of around this area here. And this is when the suspect had passed them, and this is around like 1:38-ish, 1:40, somewhere, it's not exact, but the juveniles claimed that he had his head down, walking with a purpose, did not respond to him. One said hi, he didn't respond. So it'll be interesting to know what else they may say that was left out in the PCA affidavit. But even in Allen's own statement, it kind of coincides with his original statement to Dan Doolin. He says he saw 3 females, but could have been easily that maybe one had wandered off for a minute, or maybe the 3, the shortest girl was kind of in the back and he just didn't even see her, so he didn't realize there was 4 of them. And then he even talks about hair color. And then just kind of what he says. He said he didn't speak with them, and then that kind of corresponds with them, where they're like, well, we tried to say hi, he didn't say anything. So it's, just little things, you put them together, they're all little tidbits that add up to a bigger picture that, that doesn't look good. Another thing that, I heard on Murder Sheet, I don't know if anybody's heard this as well. I'm trying to find the episode. There was an episode about a month ago, maybe a little bit more, where just out of the blue, sometimes out of the blue, Murder Sheet, they'll usually cover a certain topic on their, when they're talking about Delphi, whatever the latest motion is going on. But there was one where, it's the same scenario, but they then kind of threw in this whole Dan Doolin thing, and I can't remember exactly what was said, but it kind of implied that Allen had known Doolin in some form or fashion, either a friend of a friend of a friend, or somehow, because obviously it's a small town, right? They probably run into each other. And I even recall, if I remember, maybe even at the bar as well. But anyway, so it would make sense for him, if he kind of had a connection to him, to maybe go to Dan Doolin because he knew him. And remember, Dan Doolin was just a conservation officer, which is like game and fishing. He's not like a detective. And they just met at a grocery store. Again, just kind of odd. Unfortunately, this statement would be recorded and then unfortunately misfiled. Apparently they put Richard Allen Whiteman or something, or Richard Whiteman. And that, unfortunately, that tip, according to prosecution and ISP, is that tip got misplaced. And it's very sad because if it turns out to be Richard Allen, they could have solved this thing a long time ago. One of the witnesses, one of the sisters, I think the younger one of the two, after the incident happened, they had seen this guy here, who was, what's his name? Oh, it's not right there. Remind me in chat. I forget his name. I want to say, God, it's at the tip of my tongue. But anyway, another convicted felon at the time that was in the news. And she said, oh my gosh, that kind of looks like the guy that we saw. Now, keep in mind, apparently the person, when they saw him, he supposedly kind of covered up and had a hoodie on. But that's pretty wild that she would point him out and then look at Richard Allen, the kind of the blue gray eyes. Well, he's a little more blue, but I think Allen's are a little bit blue, kind of gray. But the beard, man, the short hair, even though I don't think they'd be able to see his hair. It's pretty wild. So it'd be interesting to see what she has to say. Yeah, again, I wish I could remember and find what they said exactly. And it didn't sound like too, implying a lot. To me, it's like, oh yeah, it's a small town. Most likely a lot of these people, know each other, because it is such a small town. I don't think it would be unheard of that, he may have known this guy maybe from the bar. And like I said, I believe it was implied like a friend of a friend. But again, I wish I could re-listen to that episode. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Then we have Betsy Blair. We'll talk about her here in just a minute. But I think obviously she's going to be a big witness. Maybe more so for the defense. She's the one that saw the Ford Comet when she left. Keep in mind, all the witnesses that had claimed to see a car could only see it when they were coming down this road this way. Many of them did go down the road this way, either arriving and then leaving, but never mentioned seeing the vehicle. They only mentioned, that was something that when I dissected the probable cause affidavit, I noticed, I thought that was very interesting. All of them mentioned that when they had seen the car, that it was when they were leaving. So that tells me this car was definitely in a position where you couldn't really see it if you were going this way, but if you were leaving, you would have been able to see maybe the front and a certain amount of that portion of the car that wasn't obscured by the foliage, weeds, whatever. Excuse me. Yeah.
Betsy Blair.
Did you say bird? Did I say bird watching? Bird watching be more viable? Yeah. I was thinking when you said that, I was thinking stargazing with
arrived to the Mears
Kohberger.
parking lot at 1:47 p.m. She will be an important witness to this case in all aspects.
If you really think about this, I mean, this is so, the timing of it. Could you imagine, say, Kelsey got a flat tire on the way there, or something happened before they even left where they had to do an extra chore, or just whatever, that things could have drastically changed, and this would have never happened. I really think this was just bad timing on the girls and perfect timing for the killer. When you think about everybody that was there and just the timing of the girls arriving and the suspect and everything, it was just, I mean, even though I don't think a lot of this was clearly planned, maybe some premeditation. Obviously, if you're bringing a gun and a knife, clearly there's some premeditation there. Unless you got a concealed permit and whatever, but the timing on it, when you really just kind of look at this little time frame right here, is where it all goes bad.
As she allegedly ran into the suspect while going for a walk to the bridge.
Chris says, I don't think he did it. Yeah, we will hopefully find out the truth next week. So obviously the pavement wasn't there when this happened. It was still just kind of the rocky ground. They added this pavement many years later. But
shortly later, Kelsey German would arrive at the same Mears parking lot. She would drop off the two victims, Libby and Abby. So now you have the alleged suspect, Alan at the bridge, standing on platform 1, Betsy.
And so this is the other thing. Like I said, if you take just all the little tidbits, knowing how long it walks from where he parked to get to that bridge is anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. Just kind of depends on the pace you're walking. Clearly, the witnesses said he was walking with intent. He was in a hurry. So usually, say a 30-minute walk for someone that's a little bit slower, someone that's going faster would make that up in about 20 minutes. So him to be arriving at that bridge at about 1:50, I mean, that lines up with his original timeline. Like, that's the thing. And we'll talk about some other things that have been I think are going to be brought to light next week as well. But this whole scenario within like a 5 to 10 minute time frame, it's unbelievable to really think about, like, of how this transpired. These girls were so unlucky.
Who was walking on the trails up to the bridge, and the two victims approaching the trails.
Because what if Betsy Blair didn't leave? What if the girls sprained an ankle and didn't go any further? It's just terrible to think that this was just a short little time span that everything that could go wrong did. So this witness, Betsy Blair, she's going to be a big witness. I think could be maybe big for the defense, because she says, according to her, she saw a slender, youthful-looking man, boyish-looking. The man was in his 20s or early 30s. Alan was 40 at the time. His hair seemed poofy. Alan had short hair. He had no facial hair, which obviously Richard Allen has seen most of the time with, a kind of a goatee mustache look. So, yeah, this really kind of throws, this sketch just threw everybody for a loop. Now, argument to that is, here's a picture from somebody standing at the beginning of the bridge, and this is platform 1. I mean, can you really make out what this guy... Now, I know, taking a picture from a camera and actually standing there and seeing them, it's different. I'm sure you'd be able to see better details than what we're seeing, but still, I mean, you really can't make out much. This is just a man. So who's to say what she may have thought she saw? And maybe from a distance, if it is Richard Allen, maybe he just had that youthful look to him from afar. And maybe she didn't see his facial hair. Maybe he shaved that day. Who knows? But one other thing is, she claims that he was on platform 1. in his original statement to Dan Doolin, he said he went to platform 1. Again, there's 6 platforms, and of all the platforms, he's standing on 1. So just another little tidbit that just lines up with a witness's statement to Richard Allen's own words originally.
After seeing the suspect, Betsy would then turn around and start heading back to her car. She would also pass the 2 victims, Abby and Libby. From here, it's believed the suspect did the same thing and would too pass the 2 victims. It's believed that this is when the suspect saw an opportunity, as he knew that no one else was on the bridge and no one behind him. For those that are not familiar with this case, should know that at the end of the bridge is private property, and you would need to turn around. Sadly, some of the girl's final moments would be captured on Libby's iPhone as she began recording at 2:13 p.m. This was probably due to the fact this guy was approaching at fast pace.
And this is another thing. This shows that this guy clearly likely was a local. He knew this area. We've heard from family interviews from way back when that, not a lot of people knew about this place. It was kind of off the beaten track. They didn't have the Hoosier Highway like they did before. And, it was really only known to locals. So, again, that just kind of adds more weight. Richard Allen lives 5 minutes away.
Allegedly, a new rumor has it that the recording of the bridge guy was taken while the iPhone was upside down.
So this is something that came from a guy that supposedly kind of got some inside information from the defense, or one of the PIs working for the defense. And again, this is just rumor, speculation until it's confirmed or debunked. But they said that she actually had the phone where she ended up turning it upside down. And actually, when you see him, this portion of the video is them just flipping it right side up. Again, it's speculation for now. But that's kind of interesting. And that would make sense too, because you would, instead of having it up, kind of like, hey, I'm filming you, even though I think she would have had it down low. And it is clearly, the footage is at the very least centered, if not at a lower vantage point. It would be interesting to find out that it is actually, at one point tilted upside down, and not that it's going to change anything really.
ISP even went to NASA to enhance the video. And it appears that some kind of enhancement has happened since this video was released. This video that Libby took is only 43 seconds and ends with the suspect approaching the 2 victims. But according to early reports, it starts off with the girls talking about which way to go. Then the suspect says, "Hey guys." Then Abby replies, and then we hear Abby say, "Is that a gun?" He has a gun. It then ends with the infamous "guys down the hill" quote.
So for anybody that doesn't know, that video that she records, it kind of starts out about where he's starting to walk. He's been walking the entire time. But apparently the video starts out, and most of this was kind of came from the mother. Was it the mother? Yeah, the mother of Abby, who shared it with the content creator. And there wasn't a lot, but basically the video kind of starts out. I think Libby did know that something was kind of wrong. This guy kind of approaching at a pretty fast pace. And so she started recording. I think at the very beginning they're talking about girl stuff, and then which way to go. And then, so there's been a lot of misinformation or confusion about how the guys down the hill is, the audio, how it's put together. and it's really split apart. And really, from what I understand, is he apparently says, "Hey guys," but for some reason they took out the "hey," which is weird. But they had the guys. So he says, "Hey guys," and then they kind of repeat with like a and then shortly seconds later, Abby tells Libby, "I think he has a gun," or something like, "Is that a gun? Oh my gosh, he's got a gun." And then I'm not sure what else is left than other than him approaching, and then the infamous "down the hill." So maybe there's maybe a few words before that, or we're not sure. Obviously, we'll eventually find out per the discovery and release of it. But yeah, it's pretty scary. But anyway, a lot of people always thought that those were together guys down the hill, but that is taken from two different sections. And when he's saying "down the hill," you can actually see after the bridge there is this, concrete or rocky area, and you can actually hear them, the gravel. They're actually walking on the gravel. You can hear it in the part that's down the hill. Way to go. Then the suspect says, "Hey guys." Then Abby replies, So Betsy Blair leaves. And that's when she spots the Ford Comet. And then another thing that was kind of more recently released. I mean, it's been months, but we now know that Libby's phone stopped moving at 2:32. So the recording starts at 2:13. They would be forced down this hill, and these hills are steep. There's almost like two of them, and the first one's really, I think both of them are pretty steep, but I think that first one's really steep. But they would eventually cross the river. Who knows if they ran or he just forced them across. But then it appears her phone stopped moving at 2:32, which is 19 minutes. And although it doesn't sound like a lot of time for stuff to go down, in the Brian Kober case, four people are killed in less than 9 minutes. It doesn't take long, especially in those kind of situations. Yeah, a command, right. I can't imagine being at that age and having a gun pulled on you. And these poor girls, everything to go wrong. I mean, just terrible. Yeah, how powerless. Yeah. Won't get too much into this, just a few things here. He would allegedly have Abby, we don't know exactly what transpired, but Libby would undress, and I believe Abby partially undressed. I guess it depends on who you ask, the defense or the prosecution, but Libby was completely nude. And this is where I think, this is just one of my theories, is I think she put her phone in her shoe, and maybe while she was disrobing, and I think she kind of like buried it, so somebody to like hopefully find the phone. But sadly, he would attack Libby. We don't know, maybe he incapacitated Abby at some point before he went after Libby. But obviously, he would take two. She would get three cuts to the neck, two on one side and one on the other. This tree, she would be near one of the trees when one of the first slices came, and obviously anybody that gets attacked and bleeding, they would go to cover their wound. Obviously with a cut like that, with that kind of fatal wound, massive blood, and she would have blood on her hands. And there was an expert recently that testified that he believes that this was kind of her hand almost kind of going down, like kind of going across and down the tree. And it's almost like an upside down L. Unfortunately, there would be a lot of blood near the base of the tree, and they believe not long after she did incur 2 other cuts, 3 cuts total, and unfortunately succumbed to her injuries. Abby, it's believed that, not sure exactly, was she half dressed or what, but the only wound she had was sadly one stab puncture wound to one of the like jugulars or something like that, to the neck area. Very sad. Odd thing is that Abby would be found with Libby's pants on her. So either that happened after post-mortem, but according to the prosecution, they say that Abby was clothed already with Libby's clothing. So I do wonder if maybe if she had herself put Libby's pants on, for whatever reason. I don't know. Well, obviously, those are some of the bigger mysteries that we'll find out eventually. Bell, Chris, do you think they have the right person? I do. Everything compared to the other suspects and Odinism, everything lines up with, not everything, but everything that we have with Richard Allen. All these things that I've been talking about throughout the show already, they're little bits that they line up with even his own words, This is where the case really took a strange turn, but we'll come back to this. But they were found with sticks on them. In my opinion, they were due to an attempt to kind of hide the bodies. They're in a wooded, leaf-filled area with tons of branches lying around. Originally, this kind of added to the whole Odinism thing. But I really think, a lot of people kind of think, if you're looking at a top-down view, yeah, you may see some symbols, but you got to think the people that might be coming up across them, they're going to be yards away, and they're going to be seeing them more from like this, a side view where, the further you go back, the more they're going to look like this, where they're just going to blend into everything else. And I think that's what the killer was trying to do, was just quickly throw some sticks on them.
Even though the 2 victims were likely dead by 2:30, or at least Libby, the killer would spend almost another hour with the 2 victims, likely covering up his crime and tracks. Meanwhile, many others would be on the trail that day, but sadly had no idea what was going on. Derek German Libby's father arrived to pick them up. They were not at the meeting spot, so he went to look for them, but ended up going down a different trail.
Then we'll come to our another big witness, is Sarah Carbaugh. Now the killer spent, I think I just said that in this little recording, that the killer, if they were, or at the very least, Libby was dead around 2:35. The killer would spend nearly an hour with the victims, probably covering up his tracks. That's probably why they never was able to capture this guy, because there was really nothing for them DNA-wise. There may be some kind of DNA. There's been rumors. We'll find out eventually next week. What if any kind of DNA was there? Was it just some kind of DNA from, because we can share DNA with others all the time when we interact with people, and could it be that maybe Libby or Abby interacted with somebody earlier that day and when they and found the bodies, and then they found like other DNA, it could have just been what they call secondary transfer, where it's just kind of, natural, but unfortunately it didn't tie back to a killer. Then the infamous original photo came from Sarah Carbaugh, who was driving by. This is where it'll be interesting to see what she says, because originally in the PCA, it says that she stated that she saw a man wearing blue jacket, blue jeans, and was muddy and bloody. Emphasize on the bloody. According to the Frank's Motion, they said no, she didn't say bloody, and that it wasn't a blue jacket, it was a tan jacket. So, but then I kind of think about what happens when a jacket gets muddy. It'll kind of look tan, brown. Maybe she, so it'll be interesting, because I'm sure maybe the truth kind of lies in between. And then the killer, while walking back, obviously Sarah Carbaugh would drive by and see this guy walking. And it's so weird that the killer would do this, but obviously he wouldn't go back on the trails because there'd be people on the trails. You would think he would kind of maybe go within kind of like the tree line area and maybe kind of just walk, just inside the tree line, because there's no mention of the killer captured on the camera. So clearly he got around that somehow. So it'll be interesting. I think they do, don't they? Doesn't Indiana do? I had never understood why they didn't go for it. Maybe they just didn't feel like they felt like they maybe had enough evidence. But keep in mind, remember, they didn't capture Richard Allen until 5 years later. So probably a lot of damning evidence. Like let's say if it is Richard Allen, like if he was muddy and bloody and he got in that car and left like DNA on the car. Obviously, that DNA probably got lost, whatever. You could replace the car seats or car covers or whatever. And so a lot of like but just extra evidence that could pile on would not be there, because obviously 5 years have passed and who knows what evidence if it is him, he would have gotten rid of. So I do wonder if they just didn't feel confident with the death penalty, because, that's a lot. Then we'll look at some of the other people here, that suspects. And then there's
Here are a few suspects that came before Richard Allen. One of the bigger known person of interest was Ron Logan. The victims were found on his property.
So this is why I've never understood why the defense used Ron Logan. I think he would have been a shoo-in for the defense. I mean, there's still many. I'm sure I know a few probably in the chat that feel like Ron Logan could be one of the suspects. They're found on his property. He made up a terrible alibi. Now, obviously, that was to cover because he just didn't want them to know that he was driving that day because he had a suspended license. But it doesn't look good when you're telling a friend or family member to make up an alibi for you, and FBI finds that out. It's like, around the time frame that these girls are killed, and they're found on his property. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't look good at all. But from what I understand, one, it should show you that the defense would rather go with an Odinism theory, which in my opinion just sounds outlandish, compared to just going after, or a Ron Logan. Tells you that there's something they have, and this was hinted by somebody recently as well, that there is something, like they knew where he was before. He only had a short window. They knew he went to the garbage dump, and then he did go to the pet store. But I think there's clearly something else that they know, and there's the reason why they didn't use Ron Logan. Because to me, he would have been a shoo-in.
German shot this chilling image of the suspected killer approaching.
But if you do want to hear something creepy, here's Ron Logan repeating down the hill, and oh my gosh, it does sound like Ron Logan, but
on a hiking trail, and she recorded the killer's voice.
What do you hear on there?
Nothing that I recognize at all.
Here it is.
No one. I don't recognize the voice at all.
I asked Ron Logan to repeat those same chilling words.
Down the hill.
And that image.
It does sound like him. I'm not gonna lie, but I mean that's 3 words, and obviously we haven't heard Richard Allen. Yeah, we had like a few clips that we could take that from a few Facebook videos, but we really haven't heard Richard Allen speak. So,
Of the suspect?
The picture is of such poor quality, it doesn't look like anyone I've ever seen.
Police have not revealed what led them to search his home, but said in a statement, "We basically are here to try to eliminate him or put him as a higher suspect in our case." Ron Logan told me he is devastated by the discovery of the bodies on his property.
Yeah, I think he was just terrible timing for Ron Logan, in my opinion. Terrible timing. Randomly, good to see you, a member for 18 wonderful months. Thank you so much for your continued support for this channel. It means the world to me. You are a legend. God bless you. Mitzi, hope you're feeling better, Chris. We missed you. Thank you so much, Mitzi. Member for 14 months. That's so awesome. Bless you guys.
That was like being hit with a bolt of lightning on my property. Are you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, Amy, because they still can't bring it up. They still can bring up the Odinism. So here's the gait of Ron Logan. He's kind of got more of a wide duck gait. Obviously, it's really hard because we don't have much to go off with him. But keep in mind, Ron Logan's over 6 feet tall. You would think the witnesses would say, oh my God, this guy that passed us was a giant, Well, much taller than us. Because I think a lot of the witnesses varied from like 5'1" to like 5'6". Or not, I don't even know 5'6". I think that's a little bit too tall. I know one of the girls is a little bit taller, maybe 5'5". So you got to think a 6 foot plus person walking past girls that are, are average 5'3". I mean, he would be a giant. Well, I wouldn't be a giant, but I mean, it would stand out. It does. I mean, I'm not kidding. It really does sound like him. But again, and this is when I started covering the case, Kagan Klein. Oh my gosh, this really sparked the case, the interest in the case, because it was dead for what? He came around, around the 4-year anniversary? And, allegedly he spoke with Libby's friends and possibly Libby the day of or the night before But I think that may just turn out to be just a crazy coincidence at the end of the day. But then we have the Wabash River. And if anybody's not familiar with why they did the Wabash River, I will explain it. This happened in Peru, which is where they were living, where Kagan Klein and his father were living, and he has other family in that area. They searched that river for, oh gosh, it was about 4 weeks, something like that. And what happens after he got arrested, there was a few ladies that started talking with him and started putting food on his books and commissary and everything because, for those who don't know Kagan that much, Kagan was really just a loser, a big loser, and obviously a piece of dirt because obviously he was targeting children. But his father paid for everything, more or less. And then after he got arrested, his father was originally paying for his, commissary, whatever. Well, it just so happens that they kind of had a falling out while he was in jail. And this was just before the Wabash River. And he started telling the girls that were speaking with him because they were chatting with him with the device that they have, the tablets in the prison, and they kept asking him, you've got to know something more to this case, and he kept kind of implying that he knew something more. I think all to get attention, of course, but then he finally told law enforcement that I'm going to tell you a story. And so he basically tells them, hey, on February 13th, my dad picks me up in his red Jeep. We drive to the Monon High Bridge. I sit in the red truck. My dad gets out, and he goes out. He's gone for a few hours, comes back, says something along to the lines that we had a great time or something like that, some weird statement. And then they left. And as they were coming back to their home, he had Kagan ditched his phone, and Tony, the father, ditched his knife. And that is what allegedly led to the Wabash River. And apparently, from what I understand to this day, unless something changes, they never found anything. But coincidentally enough, just after this Wabash River, and speculation that they may have found something because they just stopped abruptly, a few weeks later would be the arrest of Richard Allen. And so you have Kagan, who allegedly had spoken with Libby's friends and possibly Libby even up to the day of. Many thought maybe there was a connection between the two. And then, of course, I don't think this ever helped when I'm sure he probably regrets saying this. I don't know why he said this. It's not the only actor involved in this. Because that really just kind of meant, like, to a lot of people, oh, there's two people involved. And here you have the arrest of Richard Allen, and the next person would be, Kagan Klein. Paula W., member for 26 months. That is so awesome. Well over 2 years of support. Hi, Chris. Thank you for going over this case. My pleasure. We are going to definitely be covering this. All right. Let's get into what they have against Allen, and a few other things. We got about 10, 15 minutes more to go through, I think. Mike says Klein lost his snack money. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Klein. Yeah, as far as figure wise, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how he would fit down in there. So Richard Allen has allegedly confessed to killing the girls. Over 60, 61 is the number. Over 61. They say 61. What is the term? 61. I can't think of the exact word they used. But there's more confessions than that. There's over 100, I think. But I think there's 61 that are the important ones. 60. 60. Apparently, after he was arrested, he finds Jesus, and apparently word got out in one of the documents that Allen said to his wife, if it becomes too much, I will tell investigators everything. One of the confessions, just part of it, is that he allegedly used a box cutter in the murders, which would be huge. This is going to be the thing. I think it all is going to come down to the confessions. I think it's bigger than the unspent bullet, in my opinion. Because if he starts mentioning things that only the killer could know, it's over. I mean, how else in the hell would he know, these certain details? A lot of the discovery didn't come for him until much later, and they would only show him certain things. And then Holman claims that Allen made incriminating statements on October 26th. This is shortly before they arrested him. Apparently, even the defense themselves have, sealed this particular interview. So I think there's something damning in this interview. One more time, I just want to emphasize Richard Allen did not work as a pharmacy tech. They still do it to this day. It drives me nuts. He did not work in the pharmacy. What it is when you do a background search on Richard Allen, because a lot of people did when he got arrested, it shows that he has this pharmacy tech license. And if you notice, he gets it every 2 years. Well, this is because he's a shift leader. There's tons of interviews with former employees that talk about what he did. And because of that position, you would have to eventually go into the pharmacy area. Excuse me. And to be able to do that, you have to get a pharmacy tech license, which I don't know, it sounds weird. And you have to renew it every 2 years. And you'll see that on his record. You'll see it. It's in the even number. So it's like 2016, 2014. Yeah, I think it's even numbers. So, yeah, if you were to go back, 2016, 18. So, yeah, if you go back, you'll see every 2 years. Now, what's interesting, now that he's not working as a pharmacy technician, he's actually working as a shift leader. One of your main jobs is you're using box cutters. And as a person who worked in retail, I used box cutters all the time. And I brought home so many box cutters, especially after working 8 years at the same place. I mean, I had boxes of them because I would just bring them home. And if you think about it, he supposedly helped the family with printing photos. I could tell you that is not something a pharmacy, a person in pharmacy would be working to develop photos. They were, they're in kind of like a locked area. Once they go in, it's a locked door because obviously prescriptions and everything and safety. But yeah.
one side and one to the neck. Libby.
So these are the box cutters. This is the box cutter I used when I worked at a retail store. I love these ones. These are my favorite. I don't think they probably allow these anymore, but because they want to have the safety guard on them. Sometimes some of them even move to plastic. But I loved these ones because they were, compared to this bulky thing, this thing was just, super thin, easy to, didn't weigh much. And I would literally just bite on it and just walk around, cut open boxes. So that's all I'm doing like 50% of the time is opening up boxes. So I have it in my mouth. I'd open things up, put it back in my mouth. And, you can't really do that with this one here. But I think this is more along the lines of what they may use at the CVS there. There's really two main blades. You have the square one, and then you have the triangle. I just call it triangle, which obviously fits for this one here. But the thing is the blades, even if they're new or not, they're very flimsy and they're pretty fragile. Because think about it, they're razors, right? So they're very thin. So this is where I kind of remember if they said that, Libby, obviously we're going to be talking about it next week, so I don't think it's a big deal a week prior. But, allegedly Libby nearly had her head decapitated. And I found that very hard to believe that a box cutter would do that. But now we're finding out that allegedly she was not nearly decapitated.
It has been rumored that
something that came out early on and just caught on and just rumored. But this apparently this is what is allegedly in the autopsy.
Libby had her throat severely cut, but according to certain sources who have seen a portion of the autopsy, is that Libby apparently had 3 cuts, to her neck, 2 on one side and 1 on the other. According to them, her injuries are not as severe as originally thought.
So yeah, Libby apparently had like 2 cuts on one side and then 1 cut on another side. Her trachea apparently was still intact. So if that is true, because when I heard that she's nearly decapitated and someone said they used a box cutter, not to say a box cutter couldn't do it, but a box cutter, if you move, this is the thing with box cutters, with razor blades, is if you're cutting against something and it moves, there's resistance and you moving it, if it's not going the way that it's cutting, it'll break, it'll snap like that. I've broken so many razor blades just by, just kind of, because they're just thin. They're very thin. So if you have any kind of resistance that goes the opposite ways, it'll break. And so that's why I'm like, man, could that do that damage? But now hearing that it may be that she didn't have this as severe. It's still severe. Her wounds, obviously life-threatening. Now I could see that as being a box cutter. Because obviously a box cutter's sharp, and just with Richard Allen's sake, the one thing that I can attest to is because I use box cutters. That was my main tool for work. Everybody, every job has their, people have their tools that they use. The box cutter is my main tool, and so I probably always had a box cutter. Not everywhere I went, but there's a lot of times that I had a box cutter, or if not, it was in the car. So it wouldn't be a stretch. It does kind of make me wonder.
Abby apparently had 1 stab wound to her neck, whereas Libby's were cuts.
Oh, the drywall blade. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do have different. Yeah. I don't think I've ever used the drywall, so I haven't had experience. Just the basic razor, square. It's very thin, and I just noticed, if I were to if I wasn't just cutting straight, and if I were to kind of, the box, as I was cutting, the box like tipped over, guaranteed 9 out of 10, I snapped the blade. So yeah, now hearing that, if that is true, I could now lean more towards this being a box cutter being used. And no one would have guessed a box cutter, especially with the rumors early on that she was, nearly decapitated, which may not be true at all. Calling off the search due to the dark. First 24 hours are crucial. To be honest, surprised me. Lots of other cases left search through the night. Yeah, I think they still had probably a core amount of people on the border, maybe law enforcement. I think they were worried about the volunteers. And then, of course, keep in mind, this is around a 100-foot tall bridge where, do they want volunteers going across that thing? And, because if one person gets injured or lost during the night, so this is the thing that, I guess some people got to think about is if one of these volunteers gets hurt or lost, then that changes the focus on the girls to, more not bigger priorities, but now you got more issues at hand. But yeah, it's a shame. Still, at the end of the day, it is a shame.
We're very brazen about their Odinistic beliefs on their Facebook pages and other social media accounts,
what time it is,
including the sergeant who was in charge of keeping Mr. Allen safe in Westville.
Start at 5:30.
You described one of those officers that's mentioned in one of Rosie and Baldwin's filings, Sergeant Jones, who was wearing patches that said, "In Odin we trust," on his Department of Corrections uniform.
So here's the thing. The defense said, the guard, these confessions were due to Allen getting beaten or forced into these confessions. All 60 of them were forced confessions. All 60 of them. They have cameras and audio on Richard Allen 24/7. So, and the defense has not brought up once, we found footage where this guard threatened Allen and then there was a confession. Not once have they mentioned that. So the whole guard situation, and they even said, Allen in his own statement, one of his statements, that to his wife or his mother said, I'm being treated poorly, but it's not due to the guards. It's because they leave the lights on and the other inmates, because they're noisy. Basically just describing a basic stay at a prison. And he said, no, it wasn't physical.
Warden to make them stop. And then what did you...
Like Odin smear through Rosie and confinement officers at the Allen County.
Barbara, as I'm watching that, my jaw dropped.
Okay, so for those that may not know, third-party suspects not allowed. Odinism is out the window. Obviously, a lot of people, even include a lot of people that are with the defense side, felt that they should have dropped this a long time ago. It's West Memphis 3. It's satanic panic. It's I'm sorry. It sounds ridiculous. They can't. Not one of their 5 suspects can they link to the crime scene. Their main 2, Brad Holder was he was at work. He was checked in. There's no bigger alibi than being at work, clocked in. One of the other ones, Elvis Field, who has a mentality, who's an adult but has a mentality of a teenager. This case had gone unsolved for over 5 years, and we're led to believe that possibly 5 people, one that, had, some challenges mentally, outsmarted these guys for 5 years. And the more people are likely going to leave DNA, slip up. it just didn't make sense. This also means they can't use Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, Anthony Kline, but they still can bring this up. They can still bring up the third-party suspects. They can bring up the Odenism. They can bring up Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, but they cannot do it while the jury is present. Now, obviously, they will do this, I'm sure, at some point, and this would be done to put it on the record and for future motions after trial. So, yeah, they can't do it in front of the jury, but they still can have a separate, hearing, sidebar, whatever, special days set aside to, all right, let's get our stuff in that, judge didn't allow us to put in. That way we have it on record, and then, if the trial doesn't go their way, then they can file for appeals and stuff like that. See, this is the thing about this. Okay, so Sharon, and I love Sharon because she's been an amazing supporter, 24. I just don't think we agree on this case, but I love Sharon. But here's one thing, in my opinion. This is just coming from my side. Okay, this was something that a lot of the people that defend Richard Allen, they bring up this because obviously this is brought up in Frank's motion. The Elvis Fields. He says, if they find my spit on the girls, can they explain that? And when you just take something, just a short little quote without the context to it, well, yeah, that doesn't sound good, but you got to think, this was back in 2000, I want to say 2017, when they were looking into the Elvis Field. Obviously, they looked into these guys at the very beginning. This is what people need to understand, is that FBI looked into these guys, went over to Elvis Field, obviously, who's not mentally, all there, unfortunately. And they said, hey, can we take a DNA swab? So while they're swabbing his DNA at his home, him, who's obviously it's got the mentality of a teenager, is like, well, if you find my spit at the crime scene, and has that quote, well, that makes so much more sense if he spit, if he's asking about if I spit on the bodies. He's not right. And he's asking, if you found my DNA, it's my saliva and my DNA at the crime scene, because they just got done swabbing him. If the defense had put that in, there's more context to it. It makes sense why this guy would ask that, because he's not. Anyway, just my 2 cents on it. But I'm just glad that we're going to get answers one way, where everybody sits. But again, I could just see somebody freaked out. They're getting swabbed and they're like, oh God, you find my DNA, and then, says something that, clearly is going to be taken, that doesn't sound right. And then, of course, you put that in Frank's motion and it doesn't have the full context to it. It doesn't sound good. Yeah, I have a huge playlist on Delphi. I need to really clear it out because there's a lot of lives that kind of repeat a lot of the same stuff.
We are now about 6 weeks away from the start of the Delphi murders trial, but the bills for this case are staggering. 13 investigators learned the Delphi murders trial has now cost taxpayers more than $1 million, and that total is expected to go much higher. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel explains tonight how all that money has been spent, including some expenses you might not expect.
It's been nearly 2 years since Richard Allen was arrested and charged with the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. And as the legal battle drags on, the costs keep going up. 13 Investigates has obtained these accounting records from the Carroll County auditor. They show Carroll County taxpayers have now spent just over $1 million on the Delphi murders case. Mike Fincher is Carroll County's emergency management director. He says,
yeah, I love you, Sharon.
$2.1 million for the Delphi murders trial. But as the case gets bigger and the timeline gets longer, that might not be enough.
Is there a chance you're going to go over that $2.1 million?
Part of me.
Oh, yeah.
We added 15 more days to the trial. So there's 15 more days of expenses, and now we're going to have to look at where the money's going to come from.
Of the $1 million spent so far, more than half, about $581,000, is considered expenses for Richard Allen's defense. That includes $434,000.
Remember when they were complaining that they weren't getting enough money for experts? And here, they got the money. Of course, they did do a fundraiser, which I don't even know if that money got to Richard Allen or not. I heard that all went to shit. I don't know if maybe that money did get to them or not, but I know a lot of people that donated were unhappy with how it ended.
Attorneys, $49,000 for experts, $47,000 for investigators, and nearly $38,000 for depositions and transcripts. Is that a lot for a case like this?
That is high. And this case is honestly more high profile in Indiana than most of our death penalty cases. So it doesn't shock me.
Derek Mason runs the Indiana Commission on Court-Appointed Attorneys. He says the organization will be reimbursing Carroll County for about 40% of its defense costs. That's because Carroll County is a member of the commission, which helps local communities cover the cost of big murder trials like this one.
Having that 40% reimbursement, it's almost like an insurance policy for counties.
The commission does not cover costs for the prosecutor. And so far, the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office has spent $370,000 on the Delphi murders case. Most of that, about $250,000, is for additional attorneys to help the prosecutor. The next biggest expense, $72,000 for a special podium with AV equipment like this one to be used in the courtroom. Other prosecutor costs include about $20,000.
That's where they're at here, Alan. They say right now they're at over $2 million, and they say by the time it's over, they're going to be at around $4 million.
To the extent that the courthouse didn't already have some of those things, but again, that speaks to the venue.
Because they got to beef up security.
Horrific event has happened.
13 News legal analyst Katie Jackson-Lindsay has served as both a defense attorney and a prosecuting attorney. I asked her if the $1 million spent so far is too much.
What's at stake here, you can't put a price on that. We're talking about life and liberty, the lives of 2 young girls that have been lost, and the justice that is owed to their family. And we're talking about Richard Allen's liberty, his freedom. Can't quantify what's too much to ensure that there is a fair and just resolution for everyone.
I said confessions are going to be huge. All it's going to take is him to mention something that, again, the box cutter. Who would have guessed a box cutter? Again, we don't know if the box cutter was used. It could be just maybe a fabrication, but if the box cutter was used, no one would have guessed a box cutter. Let's see. Anything else? So, jury, oh my God, I cannot believe it. We're almost at the end of today. So, trial starts a week from today. Obviously, jury selection for the first 3 days. So, October 14th. So, I believe the 17th, I believe, which is a Thursday. He faces 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of murder while kidnapping. And to be honest, I don't even know why they would really plead, because he isn't facing the death penalty. I don't think that even if he pled, he's not getting out. So to me, the only thing is, I mean, you've already spent all this money. Why not just go for it? You know, you've already dragged it out this long. But just my final thoughts, and we'll get to chat for a minute and we'll head out. But to me, with corruption thing makes no sense, because corruption usually, you know, on Carroll County or whatever, if that was going to happen, why wouldn't that happen like in the beginning? You know, like the West Memphis Free, you know, like people are freaking out, satanic panic. So they went back and interviewed one of the kids who wasn't the brightest kid, and of course he said some things that weren't good, and then forced confession. And then bam, and then we have West Memphis 3. Here, they're going to wait 5 years and then go like, oh, well, we didn't like these guys. And then, you know, we'll go back to Richard Allen and we'll throw him under the bus. And then we're going to spend $4 million? $4 million to just throw somebody under the bus? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. Why not just take Ron Logan? He's dead. And, you know, throw him under the bus. Yeah, we found some stuff. It was Ron Logan. We don't need a trial because he's dead. And bam, everybody's happy. It makes no sense. As far as corruption, in my opinion, that's just my opinion. I would think you would see that in the beginning, not after 5 years. And now seeing that they're looking at $4 million, and taxpayers are gonna have to pay this. It just doesn't make sense. Justice for Abby and Libby. God, I cannot believe it. 1 week away. It sucks. I believe in transparency. I'm not a big Goal fan. I'm not afraid to admit it. I do think you need someone like Judge Goal in a case like this, but I don't see why. I can understand certain days maybe not film and just have audio because of the situation with the girls. We don't want something like Gannon Stout happening again. But yeah, I'm not happy with. Yeah, it's a bummer. They could have done audio at the very least. My goodness. And Indiana is just a state that has not been big on cameras, and Carroll County as well. They're terrible. Their track record, when it comes to their track record, it's terrible. Oh, thanks so much, Ditto. But again, I think everybody will hopefully get answers. I'm sure maybe not everybody, but we'll get. I think opening statements is going to be real shocking. I think the confessions are going to be big, and depending on what are in them, obviously some of that's going to be in the opening statements. And I think by the 17th we will hear the groundwork of what they got, and I think it could be shocking. But yeah, we're running a little bit longer. That's weird, man. Gosh, I had everything set up. I did stop it. I did stop it quite a bit. Ditto, thank you so much for the $3 super sticker. It helps support this. I spend hours and hours putting these together beforehand. Oh yes, that's the big thing I think a lot of people forget. Especially for people think. I think people, not all people, but some people feel like they're entitled to know what's in the PCA affidavit, or they think because the PCA affidavit is weak that's all they have. And the PCA affidavit is only there just to get a warrant. Obviously there's so much more, and who knows. Other thing, I think I talked about it for a second, but apparently they enhanced the video. Who knows how much has been enhanced, but I just wanted to mention this before we go. I've been dying to know every piece of clothing that he had on. This is one of the biggest things I've always wanted to know. Is it a sweatshirt? Is it a fanny pack? What the hell is this thing coming out of his front? Is that a scarf? Does he have a hat on? Like a driver's cab? So many things. And maybe with the enhanced version that they've maybe established, maybe that'll clear some of it up. But that is something I'm like, I've always wanted to know what the hell this guy was wearing, man. They got RA, just in my opinion. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I hope everybody gets the answers they're looking for, wherever you sit on this case. I really do. But we'll find out soon. So Wednesday, I may do a Sebastian Rogers case coverage, and then coming into the weekend, it's just gonna be Delphi, because I mean we're by the time we know it, the trial will be like, well, it won't be over, but we'll be in the middle of it. Like, I can't believe it. It's finally happening. It's crazy. Gil, I do have a lot of videos on it. If you want to check the playlist, or if you just go back to the beginning of this live, it really kind of covers everything, really. So, but I think I'll head out of here, guys. I appreciate everybody being in here. Yeah, Diana, I really hope something breaks so I can share some of the information that I have been told, but obviously it's been told to me in confidence. There was, the locals shared with me a lot of information that I was allowed to share with people, but, there were some things that because I talked to them every other day since I started into that case, they appreciate that, whatever they tell me, in secret, that I keep secret, unless there's an appropriate time to be able to divulge that information. There may be some stuff that I may be able to divulge. It won't be a lot, but again, it really just goes towards likely abduction, and there's a vehicle behind it, and I don't know what's going on. Hopefully, with everybody getting involved, something cracks. So, yeah, I think they said that, obviously, Ellen, 2017 is when they got that video. I think it came from a Snapchat video, and it was downloaded from the cloud, so it had lost some. It didn't get properly. What's the word I'm looking for? It was compressed, so it didn't get decompressed properly. And so that's why it's all choppy like no, I think it's 3 days as they got it slated for, 14th through the 16th. Let's see, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, that's 3 days. And then it's Thursday, 17. That's the day. Maybe it could be the 16th. Maybe it might start on the 18th. I guess it just kind of depends on the jury selection process. So, but next week, it's crazy. I can't believe it. We're here. So crazy. Jennifer, another person, a wonderful mod, and somebody that I know is, I'm sure, can't wait for this trial to start, because every time it seems like we're going to have one, gets postponed, and so they can't do that anymore. It's cost them too money. So, all right. Love you guys. Love you, members. I'll have some stuff for everybody coming soon. More stuff as well on the Madeline Soto case. I did a Stephen Stearns. It was like a 2.5 hour video, all his interviews. I'm going to do a Jennifer Soto one. And that takes me a long time because I try to enhance the audio because some of them got bad audio. And a lot of the other channels, because I, doing other things. So I try to enhance the audio, and then I always add the visuals and stuff. So those videos take a long time. So I'll have those out for the members and Patreons, hopefully in a day or two, with Jen Soto's side. So, yeah, I really wanted to go live yesterday, but I still have pressure in my ear. But yeah, we'll have to do a makeup live, maybe Thursday. So, all right, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your night. I'll have some stuff coming out tomorrow. I don't think a live, but we'll see what happens. So thank you guys so much. Love you guys, and we'll see you very soon.